So this week we find ourselves with Nicholas Williams from Boo Consulting. So Nick, you are officially titled as a GRC analyst. So I had to do a little bit of research and Googling to actually find out what that means. But do you want to tell us maybe?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's quite a broad title, I guess. But GRC stands for Governance, Risk and Compliance. With the job of the company that I'm with now, Boo Consulting, my role is helping to implement sort of governance frameworks such as ISO 27001 or management frameworks, which is implementation of a information security management system. Bit of a mouthful. We also do 14001, which is an environmental management system, 9001, which is quality management system. So that would be part of it. My main focus will probably be a lot of ISO work, but also training. So before I came into this role, I've worked in social health and social care for 12 years. In a variety of roles, which I'm finding are very transferable. There's a lot of transferable skills from that industry into sort of cyber and IT.
And have you got any examples of what some of those might be?
Well, I guess the main one. So the last 4 years that I spent working in health and social care, 2 of them I spent which were during COVID. I worked as a suicide support worker. So which was as intense as it sounds. It was quite a job. And then the last 2 years I've spent working for a small care provider who focus their efforts on helping children who have quite severe behavioural difficulties through because of learning disabilities and sort of trauma, things that they've gone through as young people. And the commonality with a lot of suicide work and also behaviour management is behaviour change. And actually that has a lot to do with governance, risk and compliance. So especially compliance, one of your sort of biggest assets when you're looking at implementing governance and sort of management frameworks is your training and awareness. And a lot about training and awareness is trying to help people or trying to change people's habits to support the business security culture. So whilst a lot of my work was about changing people's behaviours, change people's habits, mindsets, that kind of stuff within health and social care, I've taken that, or a lot of that is then transferable into this industry. Trying to change behaviours, isn't it? Yeah.
And I mean, how do you approach that then? I assume you've sort of already been into a few companies to kind of look at implementation then and changing behaviours. I mean, what's your approach? What's your approach to that?
So, that's I guess. Well, yeah. Where do you start? I guess the first initially, if we take for example ISO 27001 implementation, which is the information security management system, there's a whole process involved in that, which sort of lays out the pathway in which it's going to be implemented. When it comes to changing behaviour, we're looking predominantly there at a clause which is people controls. So we're looking at what we can put in place to help staff and say staff, anybody supporting the business, any human who's supporting the business, how we can change their behaviours to be able to bolster the security culture. Where you start, I guess, well, having been fairly new to the industry and learning from my colleagues and our manager Lynn, like where I come in and where my expertise comes in is like I say, is in the training and awareness. So in my previous roles, I ran training programs for staff to help them deal with challenging behaviours that challenge, that kind of stuff. I guess a better way to describe it would be that particular. So I'm just trying to think how to best to explain it.
So I guess one thing maybe I was wondering about is, when Lynn kind of mentioned you, one of the things she talked about was human risk.
Yeah.
So, and for me, coming into a company to kind of look at, regardless of what compliance standards you're going to satisfy, it always involves people, isn't it? People are core to your workforce, to what you do, to what you make, and whatever service you provide. So, I mean, that from a human risk element, what would you say are the risks preventing, and maybe there's another big question as well, but preventing companies from complying?
So if we sort of move away from compliance, because compliance is whilst that is an important part of it, it suggests that it's a box ticking exercise. We need to be compliant. We're implementing this framework because we want to be compliant. If we shift away from that and look at it more as we're implementing this framework because we want to be a more secure company, we want our clients to trust that we are going to be looking after their data. We don't want to be spending our profit margins on we don't want to be spending our profit on paying fines because our security wasn't robust enough to be resilient to a cyber attack. When we're talking about human risk, I guess the human risk is a broad term. So the definition could be it's the potential that human behaviours could result in a cyber incident. We can break that down a little bit further. Well, firstly, I mean, that covers everybody who, from your supply chain to your employees, to your C-suites, to the cleaners, to anybody who has an involvement within your company, anybody who supports your company. You can sort of break that down a little bit more into sort of an insider risk or an inside risk, and then also inside threats. So an inside risk is a bit of a broad category that describes anybody in the company and any human behavior that could potentially cause harm, whether it's usually not thought as a malicious act, so it's not someone trying to damage a company, whereas an insider threat or an inside threat is generally described as something that is purposely malicious. So when we're looking at reducing inside risk or human risk, what we're looking at is we're trying to minimize the potential that a person in your business may fall for a phishing attack. So the sort of the category of attacks that affects humans the most within a company are social engineering. So that is phishing. So that's when an attacker sends a crafted email to a target. Within that email, there could be malicious links or downloads that the target is encouraged to click, and that can result in various problems. So credential theft, or they click on the link and then it says you need to sign in to Microsoft again to use this link, and then they put their details in, and then the attacker has their details. That gives them an access. Other sort of social engineering attacks may also include things that don't have a direct attacker employee or person link. So USB drop attack is quite common.
What's that?
So that's when an attacker or a threat actor, if you want to use the terms, a threat actor will leave somewhere around the target company a USB, and on that USB will be preloaded with malware. The USB may have something on it, like a sticker that says pay documents, or who's next to be fired. Something that if an employee sees it, might go, oh, actually, I'd quite like to know that. I'll have a look at that. Property of the CEO, something like that. And then they'll go and plug it into their computer, and then boom, you've got malware on your computer, which the attacker.
And I mean, is that quite
whatever it's got?
Is that quite prevalent that you're aware of it? I mean, it sounds like a lot of effort.
So well, I mean, this is it. So whenever you're looking at why an attacker might attack a business, or why the attacker might attack an organization, is they're looking for a return on investment. So if the investment is a USB, but actually what they get from that is credentials into a massive organization, and from that they have access to business emails, they have access to potential shared files. If the security within the company isn't robust enough, they can make their way and what's called privilege escalation, so they can give themselves more privilege within the company to be able to get data that isn't available to everybody. Then actually it's a very small investment. And nowadays, I mean, there was a study done by CyberSafe, and they found that 80% of data breaches that were reported to the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, were due to human error. And which that was in 2021, which is actually an improvement compared to 2019, in which case it was 90% of data breaches reported to the ICO were due to human error. Now, whenever I'm quoting, or these statistics are quoted, obviously they're from different sources, and they have different sources that they collect their data. So you can you take everything, all this kind of stuff, with a pinch of salt. But your staff have got a huge role to play in improving your company's resilience. I guess probably the most common attack vector when it comes to social engineering is phishing. And I'm sure you have received phishing emails. I've received them as soon as I started working here. I received quite a lot of phishing emails. I guess you put cybersecurity or information security on your LinkedIn profile, and it's people who, scrape social media profiles to get information about companies, then have all that information. And actually, the first one I got was quite funny when it was from Lynn, and they're asking me to contact her immediately about something very important via WhatsApp. Lynn was sat next to me at the time that I received this email, so we knew it was a phishing attempt. But it's a type of attack that is becoming more and more readily available to people who have zero to no, very little to no technical skill at all to be able to implement.
So what would be maybe some actions to take? So I know it's quite a broad question earlier about this whole compliance process and so forth, but what would you think then is the first port of call to prevent the human risk in that area?
I guess in terms of phishing, your biggest asset is going to be awareness and training. So phishing emails are becoming more sophisticated through the use of AI, but also through the cybercrime as a service. So we know about software as a service, platforms as a service, sort of legal, legitimate services that people offer, IT services that people offer. Well, cybercrime has now taken on that role, or certain criminal organizations are taking on that role to offer malware as a service, ransomware as a service. So all of these attacks can now be bought by anybody who can then use them on pretty much any organization that they want to. I guess one of the most profitable areas of organized cybercrime is the initial access broker.
What's that?
An initial access broker is someone who is paid to gain access to an organization, and then that's it. So they will obtain credentials of a member of staff potentially, and they may do this through phishing, through other forms of sort of social engineering, or finding disgruntled employees and paying them for their credentials. So, you know, it's your when it comes to that kind of attack, your best method of mitigation is going to be through training and awareness. I mean, disgruntled employees, you're looking at making sure that your employees are happy, and if they aren't, finding out why and what you can do to help help them not want to sell their credentials to people.
Yeah, and I suppose it's also having, you know, because even if you do as much as you can to prevent disgruntled employees, you may still have the odd one. I guess it's having processes in place to
absolutely,
get information back in the right method, and especially maybe if you have processes where you have to somebody go, it's kind of being aware of the potential if you haven't managed certain assets, you know, before that decision's made, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, having a mover's sleeves. I mean, second to training and awareness is having a really solid policy and process suite. You know, making sure that employees know exactly what they need to do when they need to do it when it comes to security. But yeah, like looking at I mean, maybe I am biased because like my background is training and well, if it was in a different industry, it was still you train and you make people aware. So training and awareness often gets sort of interchangeably used, or the terms get used interchangeably. So awareness is your staff and the people that support your business ability to spot threats and attacks before they happen, and then the training is there to help them to know what to do when that happens. So you can make people aware of phishing, but when a phishing email comes through, they need the training to know what to do with it. So there's a lot of you can pay for simulated phishing attacks, whereby a external company, a phishing simulation company, or trading company will send fake phishing emails to your employees, and it collects data as to how far in the process that employee then takes it. So whether they open the email, clicked a link, whether they opened the email, clicked a link, filled in their credentials, or whether they just reported the email and got rid of it. You know.
Okay. And who would you say this is best for? Because I mean, there's probably people listening who will think, well, I don't think we need to do that because we do X, Y, and Z, and it's not really an issue to us. You know.
So So I mean, so security works best in layers. Okay. There's quite a common saying, which I'm hearing more and more whenever I'm at a networking event or at a conference or anything to do with sort of security and IT security, which is there's two types of companies, or I guess you could say there's two types of people. There's those who have been hacked and had data breach, and those who are about to be hacked or have a data breach.
Fair
you know, especially with the changing landscape where cybercrime is becoming readily available to anybody, whereas before you needed to know programming, you needed to know how to write a script, how to create malware, or what's definitely to be in the right circles to be able to get it, how to implement it, etc. You know, it's in a landscape now where you have ChatGPT and you have all these, I guess I shouldn't just say ChatGPT, but sort of LLMs and AI software that can create these very convincing emails. You know, this is becoming acceptable to available to everyone. So for people who don't think that they, because they have other things in place, means that they won't need to have this in place. You can't really be too secure. Now, I'm sure there'll be people who argue with me about that.
And the thing is, I mean, it probably applies the same, the whole scam thing. You know, there's ones who have been scammed, and there's ones who are about to be scammed. Because even I've tried to be. I thought that I was pretty scam safe to a degree, but I found myself losing out on a £600 camera because I sent it to the buyer through a reputable service that I thought it was, but yet they had just mimicked the whole service all the way through.
Really? Yeah. I mean, or there's those people who have been hacked but don't know it and don't think they have been, and actually slowly but surely there's a lot of data has been used. Whenever it comes to any kind of social engineering, attackers need to do an amount of research and reconnaissance. They're going to be, if they have a target company that they want to look at, they're going to be trying to find their best way in, and they want it to be the easiest, most cost-effective way with the biggest amount of reach. I mean, you're going to be looking for your disgruntled employees. You're going to be looking for, and I'm not saying that employees are the only way that an attacker is going to get in. There was Arctic Wolf recently released their 2025 threats report. I've got one of the statistics here somewhere. So, for example, according to their 2025 threat report, the root cause, they found root causes of ransomware and data extortion were found to be external exposure. So that is, so very little of it had anything to do with humans. That is using known vulnerabilities through computer systems, which they would have found out through reconnaissance by scanning networks and looking at that kind of stuff. So that kind of attack, you're not really looking too much into thing. Some of it would have been done through phishing. You click on a link, you give someone access to your network, you put in some sort of credential.
Is there any advice that you might be able to give? So, and we've been talking a lot about companies, but even on a one-to-one sort of personal level, something that I could change tomorrow to be more safe or to be more aware, and then something that a company might be able to change tomorrow.
So I actually did a talk about this recently at Tech Cornwall's big tech showcase. I'll just find my notes from that, and that will help me sort of give a little bit of a better give us a bit more of a better flow for things.
Okay. And I definitely want to talk about sort of some of the suicide discussions as well, sort of, what that entailed and what kind of similarities or read across there is.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I guess on a personal level, if you're looking for, if someone wants to improve their sort of security posture, I mean, the basics that everybody always talks about, you need to have good, strong passwords. Attackers, if they're looking to get into your personal account, that you use the same password for everything, it's not going to be difficult for them to, if once they've found that password, to be able to. There's a website called I've Been Pwned, PWND. Have I Been Pwned? Let me just double check the actual name for that website. Have I Been Pwned? So it's Have I Been PWNED. And on that website, you click into it and it gives you a box to put your email address in. So you can put in your email address, give that a search, and it will tell you what information from that email address is for sale and whether there is a password that has been compromised. So I've just put in what I call my throwaway email address, which is the one that I use to sign up to various newsletters, or if a company wants me to put in my email address, this is one that I put in. It's a Yahoo email, and it says that I have been, this email address has been featured in 9 data breaches through various different service providers. So I've got on here Last.fm. That was quite a big data breach back in 2016, I think. It says that they breached 37 million email addresses, usernames, and passwords. So there is somewhere out there. There are 36 million usernames, emails, and passwords that that are all linked to these accounts, which someone could get them and try it on various different sites. If you have the same email address and password for your Last.fm account that was breached, and you have the same one for your bank, it's not going to be too difficult for them to be able to get into it. Something that you can from that point is you enable multi-factor authorization or authentication, where that's your something you know, so like a password, something you have, such as a phone. So that's when you put in your email address and it says, we've sent you a one-time password to this number, and then you've got that, click that, or you put that into there, and then that allows you into your account, or something that you are. So biometrics, fingerprints. I spend quite a lot of time in the sea and around rocks, so my fingerprints don't tend to work anymore. But I find so that doesn't really work too well for me. But sort of facial recognition is good, and iris recognition, that kind of stuff is all good. So, and these are all things that are, whilst they are something that a person can implement, these are also things that it's really important for companies to implement as well. Like I say, phishing awareness, being able to recognize these emails and then what to do about them. I did I did my tax return, as most people did, in January. I sent that off, and within maybe 3 or 4 hours, I had a phishing email, which was very, very convincing, from HMRC, asking me, saying, thank you for filling out your tax return, your self-assessment. Click, you have a message, or there's been a problem, click this link, and it will take you to the website. And I thought, oh, that's weird. I've been doing this for 12 years. I've never got one of those. Looked at it, sort of accidentally hovered over the sender's address, which was masked as an HMRC address, and it came up with a totally different email address. You know, and I know I've had that one recently. I know a couple of family members have had one sort of similar to that as well. So whenever you come across anything that you think, oh, that's a bit weird, you know, especially no one likes to call HMRC because it can take a wee while to get through to places to speak to someone. But, you know, putting that extra effort in to verify these things, whether it's from a government department or your phone provider. You know, a lot of banks say, we will never ask you to put your details in through email. We will never ask you to give your details over the phone. We will never do this. You know, taking those little, if you think, oh, that's a bit weird, taking those extra steps just to verify that it is an email or it is a message from them. We saw a huge rise in it when it was when people were working from home during COVID. People trying to.
What about? So I mean, you talked about AI, and obviously now things are more within people's hands than they ever were. What about the possibility of deep fake type phishing? You know, is that becoming? I mean, are you aware of any examples of that?
I mean, I guess the most, I mean, it's now huge. You go on any kind of internet, IT security, cybersecurity news forum, the Hacker News, or whatever, whoever else it is, and there's 9 times out of 10 there's an article on there about some form of deep fake, video that has deep fake sort of teams where someone's been made to do something they don't do. The most recently, the one that comes to mind recently was a Chinese firm, and I can't remember the absolute details, and I can't remember the absolute amount of money, but it was well within the millions. And someone from accounting was invited into a Teams meeting, and within that Teams meeting there was the CEO, there were others of his colleagues, there were other C-suite, and they basically said, we need you to transfer a vast amount of money from one account to another, and he did it because he was asked to. Everybody in there was fake. Nobody was real, and the company lost a huge amount of money, transferred a huge amount of money out. You know, and
what
actually,
website was that? Did you say that was on, or is that some hacker website?
Well, the Hacker News is just a news. It's a news website, so an internet security news website. Really, really good. I mean, there's plenty out there. So, I mean, some of the other sort of resources which I've been pointed to use. So, Cybersecurity News, Information Security Magazine, the Register. Cyber Magazine, but also other resources such as the NCSC, National Cyber Security Centre. So that's our government's cybersecurity department. They put out loads of really useful stuff. The ICO put out lots of useful resources as well. National Institute of Standards and Technology. So that's the United States cybersecurity department, I guess, who they all put out lots of useful information.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure that'll be really useful for people to have a little bit of a look at, because the more you are aware of, then the better prepared you can be. The thing I was thinking of is also just in that, coming back to a company's kind of efforts to make their staff aware and train them. That Teams example, there's so many things which are just part of our everyday life that you don't even think could be a question for concern, like Teams.
Absolutely.
And so I suppose, because I saw an example before of a daughter and her father, and the messages that even whenever asking for money, that there were sort of three phases of questions that they go through to just verify that it's the real person.
Absolutely, I have this with my family as well. Yeah, absolutely. So we ask each other questions that only we know that the other person has the answer, and they are, like you say, they are set questions that we always ask, which change on a semi-regular basis. So yeah, verification is going to be really important. And I'm not a threat analyst, but it's going to be interesting to see how far this sort of is taken where it comes to deep fakes and voice recognition and stuff. I even heard someone on a forum saying that even with facial recognition, you are able to falsify someone's face well enough that it will let you into their computer through the facial recognition, which is where your multi-factor authentication comes in, and it's really important.
And you see some. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No. Sorry, I was just going to think of more things for people to do that they can do. But yeah, carry on, please.
No, I guess because you see, it then makes you understand why certain, like the banks, for example, if everybody's logging into their bank app, I know mine, after maybe 3 or 4 facial ID ones, it then forces you to put the passcode in.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're doing it because they're already, and it's more critical, obviously, when you're a banking organization. But I suppose the same applies to you as a business and you as an individual. Is kind of what safeguards have you got in place to protect yourself? And
actually, that is a method of that attackers rely on. They're relying on people to get sort of authentication fatigue and just to be sick of it. So, an approach that some attackers may take is that they will continue to send fake authentication notifications until the person just goes, "Oh, for goodness sake, fine, I'll accept that." Because it just happens so often. If things like that are happening, then you need to get hold of whoever it is that is saying that they're sending these, because either it's going to be a mistake, or it's going to be someone who is trying to access your account, and they're banking on the fact that you are getting sick of these notifications coming through.
Yeah. No, good.
Yeah. But yeah, so for individuals, strong passwords, not even passwords, use passphrases, 3 random words with numbers and stuff. Password managers are the way forward. Like having hundreds and hundreds of different characters, passwords, none of which I can remember off the top of my head anyway. I use a password manager, which I find incredibly useful. Having strong passphrases, multi-factor authentication, taking your time to verify whether things are real or not. I saw something actually during my lunch saying that fake adverts are up on the rise again, are
And in
on the
what
rise.
sense?
So fake advertisements put onto various pages and the person clicks on it and it's a great deal. And then it's another form of phishing, but through advertising phishing rather than through email phishing. This is it. Phishing comes in so many different forms. There's a I mean vishing, so that's phishing with a V, which is voice phishing. Someone may phone up a customer service line pretending to be someone who is one of their customers, and they have very small amount of information, and they're trying to get more information to be able to get into that customer's account, and they will use that as a method of trying to get into the account, getting more data, getting more information. Yeah.
I mean,
So
it makes you a bit worried. It makes you start to think about, well, how am I going to ever be able to trust anything in the near future?
I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, we're at that. I guess we're kind of at that point, for sure. I mean, it's a worrying topic, but there's some pretty strong steps that you can take so that you shouldn't really be worried. Things just like having those protections that I spoke about before, making sure that your laptop and your computers and your phones are updated. Okay, there are, every time there's an update, there is some form of exploit or vulnerability that someone will find, which will result in something. But for the most part, just making sure that when those updates come through on your phone, that you are doing them. When they're coming up on your laptop, you are doing them. They're patching all the little holes in the software and operating systems that are going to give attackers that kind of way in. Verify. Make sure that who you're talking to is the right person. And all of these steps. Again, there's another sort of quite common saying where there is no such thing as 100% security. The technological landscape is changing so quickly; it's impossible to plug all the holes that are appearing. But these steps can make you harder. What you're trying to do is you're not trying to make it worth the attacker's time. They're looking for a return on investment. They're looking for easy access, unless you're a massive, big corporation like the company recently that lost 1.5 billion in Ethereum. That would have required a huge amount of resources and money, and is sort of suggested that it was a state-sponsored attack. But for your average, for a lot of people, they're just looking to make a easy, hassle-free money. And you are easy, hassle-free potential money if you haven't got passwords and you're not looking after that. Other things having a VPN, a virtual private network, which masks your IP address. Easy. There's lots of free options out there. Proton have a free version. I'm sure there's lots more. I use the paid version of Proton for a lot of my stuff.
And what does that do for people? Essentially, that gives, every time they access the internet, they've got then a private.
Yeah. So it's through technology that I'm not going to be able to explain very well. But it masks your IP by connecting you to a server that is a virtual, or you are part of virtual that is in another place that's where you are. So in London or something like that. That is an awful explanation of it, and I'm sure that I hope some people give a better explanation of that.
That sounds fine. So I mean, there's definitely some quick wins, isn't there? And I mean, even the example you gave before, which you're doing, is having an email address you use for X and an email address you use for Y. I think some people are still, because especially the buying process now is a lot of companies will send you a receipt by email, so you're putting your email in, and it's kind of, well, maybe you have one for that. Don't use your work email or your
absolutely, and you're relying on them to be looking after your data as well. Something that I was told recently, I think it was maybe like a money supermarket thing, was if you have a credit card, I'm not suggesting people go out and take credit cards because they can be pretty nasty things. But whenever you're doing any internet-facing purchases, use a credit card, because if you have money taken off you, it's a lot easier to get it back. So my debit card is used strictly for my mortgage and bills, whereas anything that I purchase on the internet is going through my credit card. That's again something quite easy that you can implement to sort of protect yourself just that little bit more. But yeah, so I mean, in terms of businesses and companies sort of looking to reduce human risk, again, I will always say training and awareness. Make sure that your team or anybody does it. Oh, we were talking about supply chains. That was it. I was talking about sort of like looking at suppliers as well. But making sure that your team knows what they're doing. So whenever you're getting a supplier, when you're looking at taking on a supplier, and you're buying a service from them, doing good due diligence on them will save you in the long run.
And what kind of due diligence would that be?
So primarily, first off, you're looking at their certifications, whether they hold any security certifications or assurances. So whether they have ISO 27001, whether they have cyber essentials, and whether they have to do SOC 2 reports, you can get a lot of information from that. So big companies such as Google and Apple, they have all their ISO certifications. They've got fairly robust. You hope that they would have fairly robust services, but for smaller firms, smaller companies, showing that you do look after people's data and that you will look after it can be a real good that can set you aside from competitors potentially. Showing that companies and people can trust you. I know that a lot of if you want a government contract, if you want to work with the government, you have to have ISO 27001 certifications. So if anybody's sort of any companies who are looking for getting government contracts, that is a necessity.
And I guess that's where like you guys would come in to be able to support on that kind of
absolutely.
Advice
We do specialize in 27001. My colleagues and Lynn have got a huge amount of experience, as well as like a really easy toolkit to use and really spend the time to work with companies to help them to achieve that. Due diligence, security assurances is a good place to start, and just chatting to them. If it's a small company and you can speak to someone, ask them what their security procedures are like. By law, you have to report breaches over a certain size, so you can do your own research to find out if they've had a breach within a certain period of time, or if they did, what caused it.
And where would that? Is there a website you're aware of to do that?
So the ICO, Information Commissioner's Office, breaches of a certain size, and I can't actually remember the exact details for that. Must be reported to them, and I'm sure there are other resources that I can't think of right now. The sort of government, I'm sure there are more. I'll ask Lynn and see if she knows anything more. She'll be a good person to talk to about that kind of stuff.
No, sure.
But looking for that. So due diligence, making sure that your suppliers are maintaining their security, and then that goes down the line, because then hopefully they'll make sure that their suppliers are doing it, and then they'll make sure that their suppliers, again, a really common articles that are being published at the moment on these various news websites, information websites, is supply chain attacks, where attackers are looking to disrupt supply chains and therefore disrupt the people that they are supplying. Unfortunately, a lot of the time there's a lot of sort of healthcare, health and hospitals that are targeted because of that.
Now, you talked before a little bit about your sort of previous experiences with obviously sort of like suicide support. Are there any I feel worried about saying like methods that you've learned or ways of talking with. I mean, talking through the role. What did the role involve when you were doing that?
So I was I ran I worked on the phones predominantly.
Yeah.
I worked for a charitable organisation who took phone calls from people who felt that they needed help. And I guess when from the point of view, yeah. It was a pretty crazy job doing a pretty crazy time. I guess things that I've kind of learned that I learned there, which have kind of come over to this bit is being able to sort of listen to people, listen to your colleagues, listen to your staff, and find out what their problems are. A staff that feel supported and listened to within a company are far less likely to want to potentially sell their credentials. But also, I'm sure, like I saw a statistic recently, there's actually not a huge amount of people that do that. A lot of the time, it is people who are in the workplace who have problems outside of work. Everybody has life problems. They're coming to work. They're struggling to leave that at the door, and then you make mistakes. If someone is suffering from poor mental health or ill mental health because of something that's going on in their life, they are more likely to click on a phishing link because they're not thinking about it. So, looking after your staff is a hugely beneficial means of protecting your business, not just from the point of you will lose staff, but also from a security point of view as well.
No, that's a good point in terms of the approach. So how does that conversation go with the person who's rang up because they've got suicidal thoughts to bring them back down, and can we learn from that the opposite to bring someone else?
I guess the thoughts are the part that is showing. There's a root cause there somewhere. If you can put it's about being proactive rather than reactive as well. You can, if someone is suffering in that way and they are having sort of those kind of thoughts, all you're doing there is you're looking to minimize. You're looking at harm reduction.
Yeah.
So if someone was to call the line, who said that they were imminently going to do something, we would be looking at minimizing that.
Yeah.
I want to be quite careful the way that I talk about this, because what I don't want to do is compare too much the things that the horrible things that people go through to kind of a security conversation, just because I'm aware that it's a really hard topic. Yeah, absolutely.
And there's so much more at play. But I think maybe just to pick up on what you've just said there is that obviously in that scenario it's to reduce harm and minimize any impact. So I suppose if we're just taking a learning, it's just the opposite. To get people to act more, to be more proactive, it's to maximize the harm from data protection. We need to understand, well, what's the worst that can go wrong, and let's track back from that, from how we implement data protection in our business or in my life. I need to be thinking what's the worst so that I can put the appropriate controls in place, I suppose is what we're saying. Not to scaremonger people, but
Yeah. I guess maybe a better way might be saying, instead of what's the worst thing that could happen, because there's always going to be something worse that could happen.
Yeah,
What's the
yeah.
most realistic thing that could happen? And that's where the
Mm,
risk analysis side of stuff comes in. What's the most realistic thing that could happen?
mm,
And then what are the effects of that then happens?
mm.
What are the effects of that on my business? So um,
Yeah, because I suppose you have to believe it. You have to believe that it is an actual risk to then be willing to go along with whatever you put in place, isn't it? I suppose.
and you can't prepare for everything, which is why things like threat analysis is really useful. If you can use some form of threat analysis um, provider, and I think Windows even do one now as part of their Defender suite. Looking at what is going to be most affecting your business is a really good way to prepare for it. If you have a company that operates finance, healthcare targeting isn't going to be much of a problem for you.
Yeah.
Attacking supply drug companies or whatever, and vice versa. So being aware of what the sort of threat landscape is within your industry is a really good way of looking at what you should do to sort of prepare for those. I guess there is a point, and I wish I could remember where. I wish someone else who had better rehearsed it than I am could explain it. But there's a point where security systems, if you try and put too many into place, they start to counteract each other and
Okay.
cancel each other out. Which is where it's really useful to have something like an information security management system, which uses a framework, because all these various controls that you have within the framework work cohesively to protect your company. Like, so for example, I'll just see if I can find.
Yeah, I guess what you're saying is there is no silver bullet, but
No way.
yeah.
No way. No. There's things that you can put in place to minimize it. And there's things there's controls that you can put in place to minimize certain areas of attack, and to sort of shrink that attack surface. But ultimately it comes down to a multitude of things. So if you're looking at sort of an ISO 27001 framework, where you've got 4 clauses. So you've got organizational, which looks at sort of like organizational controls that you can put in. So, for example, access rights. So making sure that people have the correct access to their job. Another one that I can just pick out from here is segregation of duties, ensuring that everybody knows what their responsibilities are within the company in terms of when it comes to security. You then have another clause is people control. So you're looking at good screening, terms and conditions of employment. And then there's physical controls. So this is sort of like physical security monitoring, checking your entry, ensuring that the security of assets that are taken off premises, so whether it's company phones, that kind of stuff. And then you have your technological controls, which is your network security or malware, the logging of activities and being able to go through logs. There's lots of different areas that need to be taken into consideration to build your company's resilience, and that's where the beauty of ISO is. The thing is, like, you can implement an ISO 27001 without going through the accreditation. So you could, as a company, put all the things in place to have an ISMS, but don't have to go through certification if you don't necessarily need it. But at least then you know that you have robust information security when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's what, you hit the nail on the head in terms of what compliance is. It really, it's a best practice framework, regardless of whether there's a mandatory element in that from customer orders or customer requirements. But if you just look at it as a best practice methodology, then regardless of whether it's driven from the top down, it should be something that's on people's radar to want to think about implementing doing.
I mean, some of the challenges of having to, so we're currently sort of reviewing our training provisions, training products, and I've been speaking to some of our clients as well as speaking to people at some networking events, and it's all that one of the hardest parts that comes with security is employee buy-in. Well, and it's one of those things. It's like, well, actually, a lot through so many times, and I think about when I look back into my previous work life, why do we do it this way? Well, this is just the way we do it, and this is the way we've always done it. Stop asking questions. A lot of people want to know why they're doing this training. Why am I taking 8 hours of my day to do this training? Why is this kind of stuff? And as per our sort of conversation we've had already, a lot of the things that you learn in your workplace, you can then take out to your personal life. So it's not just about, whilst you need to look after your company, if you want to continue having a job and your data and your company has a data breach, I think that's a statistic, something like 60% of companies, small to medium enterprises who experience a data breach will close within 6 months. We've closed within 6 months. Data breaches are they happen, and if it's big enough, that could put people out of their job. So that's the reason why your employees, or that's why people should be invested in the security of their company. But then also take what you learn out of these training days and apply it into your life. You can protect you can protect your company, but you can also protect your family. You can. There's some family members have got children who are starting to access the internet, and you need to think about how, protecting them is really important. You hear horrible stories all the time about online predators and things. When you're not giving your children access to the internet, you are giving the internet access to your children.
Do you know what? That's a very, very good.
And so many companies will have some form of IT training and awareness. Some of it will be better than others, but take what people learn, and then you can implement that into your life. So ensuring that you have if they have a mobile device, I used to work with a woman, and she had two children, and I remember talking to her, and we were talking about how they'd just been given phones and things, and she was saying, I can control their phones, everything that happens from my phone, so I can see exactly what they're on, I can see what they've done, I can turn it off if I want, I can do this, that, and the other. And at that time, before I was kind of in this industry, I was like, God, big brother vibes, give them a break, let them do this and stuff. And I guess because I didn't have a mobile phone until I was 16, I was like kind of that. But now actually, and I used to tell people that story, and I used to be like, can you imagine how overbearing that must feel? But now I'm in this industry, I'm like, that was the right choice. That was a really, she knew what was going on, and I know that she did a lot of work that did where she was supposed to. I used to support young people who didn't have like a severe learning disability. They were able to go about their days with very minimal support. They had some sort of usually emotional regulation issues and things, and maybe sort of because of that, weren't able to go to school, so they sort of lacked a bit of an education. And I would spend so much of my time trying to convey the message that the person that has messaged them on Instagram isn't the girl that they are, or the boy that they are putting themselves over, and actually they don't want to be in a relationship with you, but they do want you to send them money. And it was a really difficult. I look back on it and I think it was a really difficult conversations that we had to have, because we didn't know how to do it. I mean, there's lots of really good resources online now to help parents and carers to have that conversation with these guys. But I mean, that is an unfortunate side effect of the care industry, is that of those children living in the circumstances that they did, in the sense that they may not have had an adult oversight on sort of technology from that point of view. But you know, there are, it's getting better to that point, I guess. But it's like it's a thing that's changing, and if there's anything that so I mean, going back to my original, that's a bit of a tangent, sorry, but going back to my original point, which is, you know, trying to get buy-in from employees to think about security. You know, you can take it from your place of employment, you can take it into your own life, to sort of look after your family and friends. Even though I haven't been in this industry for that long already, my mum and dad message me fairly regularly asking whether this is whether this is a real thing or is it not? You know, and not just probably not just mum and dad, but also friends. You know, but yeah, so I can't remember what the original question was from that, but yeah.
Neither can I, to be fair. But no, it's a very it was a very good explanation though, and I think that, you know, even the fact that you talked about kids these days, and that, you know, I'm not a parent, you are, but that buy-in starts at home as well, isn't it? To get them to understand why those controls are in place. Because I guess the danger with the younger generation coming into the workplace as well is that some of these things are so normal, but that maybe they don't think about it as much, but then also probably they understand some of these things more so, some because of how easy, you know, you talked about like AI in the hands of what you can actually do with it. I don't think half of us know what's really capable, but yet your 15-year-old probably does. So, and maybe there for companies, you know, using their younger resource to really understand the landscape more, get that buy-in from the older generation through getting that education across from the younger generation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess, I mean, everybody born now is going to be growing up with this kind of technology. I did hear, I think I follow a few people on, I think it's LinkedIn. I actually recently got rid of all my social media because I just got the information overload. Maybe it's because I'm also studying at the moment, and it's taking a lot of brain power to study.
not the fact you're getting older, no.
No, nothing to do with that. I was about to drop my age into it then, but as an adult, you know, like, and someone who has some life experience and who's, you know, it's overwhelming, the information that a lot of people that you are given, conflicting information as well that you are given, or that people are exposed to at the moment, even from not a security point of view. Just that fatigue, what is a good thing to do, what's a bad thing to do, and that's the sort of misconceptions that kind of come with it, is pretty big, I guess, as well. But yeah, I think there's hopefully there's a big push. Well, there's a lot. I mean, there's some regulation coming through from the government. So
in terms of age limits for social media.
Safer. I think it's called Safer Technologies Act or Safer Technologies Bill, something like that. Phone bill. That would be pretty good. And I know that AI regulation has been debated a lot as well. I'm not really sure to the ins and outs of everything like that, but hopefully we do need more regulation when it comes to technology. I know that a lot of people think that, you know, regulation is bad and it stops progress and things, but actually regulation in technology, I think, is pretty needed at the moment, and will only become more needed as technology develops and becomes available to everybody, you know.
No, good. So maybe just to finish off, if you were to give a sort of top hits, Nick's top 3 tips when it comes to, I guess, minimizing human risk,
Mhm.
What would your three ideas be?
So, for organizations,
Mhm.
I would say number one is training and awareness. So having a robust training and awareness program for your company is essential, because your employees are some of your most powerful assets when it comes to protecting your company. You need them. Almost every company needs a certain amount of employees. And whilst a lot of the time the focus is on, they're also the biggest danger, but they are also, your front line in stopping it. So training and awareness, and then that covers so many bases. You can cover lots of different attack vectors and things like that, and to being able to protect your business. Supply chain due diligence, I've touched on a few times in this talk, in this call. Supply chain, checking your supply chain, making sure that they're doing everything that they need to do to be able to maintain, to keep your company safe, especially if they have access to your network. So if you have a managed IT provider, they have quite a lot of access to the things to company sensitive data. So making sure that they have the correct security assurances in place is really important. I would then say proactive strategies or proactive security. So reviewing your policies and your security controls. And I guess this is a bit of a cheap one because it also covers a few different other things within it. Ensuring that you're sort of signing up to threat intelligence. So there's a organization called Alien Vault. They have a free threat intelligence subscription service. Where you can, you can pay. There's a paid version of it as well, and you can sort of break it down even further to your industry. But that's a really good place. I know Microsoft also have one. So things like threat intelligence, part of proactive security, data loss prevention is really important. So making sure that when if you're transferring data from one place to another, or if you're sending emails, etc., like that, making sure that you're investing in good data loss prevention. And then, like I say, simulated phishing exercises, phishing. That's a really good. It's one of the most common ways. I think it was something like 80. Actually, I've got the statistic here somewhere. It was so 80% of reported breaches were caused by human errors. This is from 2023. Phishing accounted for 84 of those attacks in businesses and 83% of those attacks in charities. So investing in phishing simulations in this room. But again, that's a really good thing for privacy and sorry, not for privacy, for training and awareness. And then if you really want to sort of show that you're taking it seriously, and if you really want to have it in there, investing in like an ISO 27001 certification, or just implementing an information security management system and not even then going through with the certification, is a really good place. It's a really good place as well. We could keep them going on, but I think
I'm sure.
My top 3.5/4.
No, excellent. And maybe one thing for, just Joe Blogs on the street.
Let's go for, I think, probably past phrases. Check what your security posture is first. So websites like Have I Been Pwned? Have I PWNED. In there, you can check your whether your email address has been compromised, and you can check whether your password has been compromised, and then ensuring that if you find that stuff out, so that will give you a good place to start. And then making sure that you have changed your passwords and you change things to reflect that is a really good one. And then multi-factor authentication, making sure that if someone does get hold of your details and they are something that they can't get into it without knowing something else. If someone does find out your password, they also need another means of getting into your stuff. It's just making it harder. make it
Yep.
not worth their time, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. No, thank you, Nick. I think that's been really useful, to be fair. Lots of facts and figures in there, but lots of really practical advice that we can put in place, and hopefully companies and people find that beneficial. So thank you for your time.